This is CNN.
I'm Jean Meserve in Washington. Representatives of President Clinton and Bob Dole have reached agreement on the timing, location, and format and participants of the presidential and vice presidential debates. National correspondent Gene Randall was covering the negotiations. Gene, tell us what they've decided.
Well, Gene, the agreement is for 3 90-minute debates, 2 presidential and 1 vice presidential. The first between Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, October 6th in Hartford, Connecticut, a single moderator, a live audience. The second presidential debate, October 16th, a town hall format. This will be in San Diego. The format will be similar to one used in 1992, again 90 minutes. And the vice presidential debate, October 9th in St. Petersburg, Florida, a single moderator. All of these debates to take place at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. There will be no participation by Ross Perot or Pat Choate, according to the agreement worked out today.
And what did the Dole camp win in these negotiations? What did the Clinton camp win?
Well, the big item for the Dole campaign was the exclusion of Ross Perot and Pat Choate. The Dole side apparently told the Clinton camp it was willing to forego debates altogether if the Democrats insisted on including Ross Perot and Pat Choate. But other than that, and no one is quite sure whether the Perot item was more than posturing by the Democratic side, the Clinton camp won pretty much most of what it wanted. It will get 1 town hall debate. That'll be on October 16th. That will be the last impression voters have of the 2 presidential candidates. And the Republicans, by the way, lost this on a coin toss. They wanted the town hall format first. The Clinton camp also did not want any debates after October 16th. They won that. The Clinton camp wanted 2-hour debates. The Dole side, 75 minutes. And so they are 90 minutes.
Gene Randall, thank you very much. And I'm Jean Meserve in Washington. We go now to Capitol Gang.
Now, live from Washington, the Capitol Gang.
Welcome to Capitol Gang. I'm Mark Shields with Al Hunt, Robert Novak, and Margaret Carlson. Our guest is former Republican presidential candidate and, more importantly, the original moderator of Capitol Gang, Pat Buchanan. Great to have you back, Pat.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be back here.
Thanks for coming in. The Presidential Debate Commission unanimously recommended this week that Bill Clinton and Bob Dole go head-to-head against each other, with Ross Perot sent to the sidelines.
Our decision and that of our advisory committee was made on the basis that only President Clinton and Senator Dole have a realistic chance, as set forth in our criteria, to be elected the next President of the United States.
I was included in the 1992 debates, even though my standing in the polls in 1992 was lower than they are now, but they roared up after the debates. Now, do you start to understand why they don't want this cur dog back in the debates again? Just 2 registered puppies.
Reaction was more favorable from the Republican campaign than from the Democrats.
I think as the commission indicated, they assumed there was no realistic chance that anyone but myself or Clinton would be elected. And I think that's what the American people make their choice between realistic alternatives.
I enjoyed having him in there in '92. I thought he made a valuable contribution. It was a good debate.
Al Hunt, in view of the new agreement just reached, is this the breakthrough, the lift that Bob Dole needs?
Afraid not, Mark. This is exactly what Mickey Cantor, the very shrewd negotiator for the Clinton team, wanted. This is what they wanted all along. They used Perot as a chit. They wanted to have 3 debates. They wanted to have them two on the presidential level. They wanted to have them tightly compressed. They wanted one to be a town hall meeting. So they got everything they wanted. Secondly, Perot's right. He had no less chance of being president this time than he did last time. He was excluded for different reasons. But thirdly, Mark, in 20 years, we all love the debates. They get big audiences. In 20 years of debates, I can only think of one that conceivably made any difference, and that was the second debate in 1980. The others, they don't change the outcome, Mark.
Pat Buchanan, your own sense.
The Kennedy-Nixon debate was pretty important. That first one for Jack
That was more than 20 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Could be. Listen, I was watching the Brooklyn Dodgers in those days.
They didn't have Japanese pitches then either, did they? Pitches were made in America.
Let me talk about this commission. This really is, in a sense, an outrageous thing. We got Republicans and Democrats deciding not only on who's going to be in these debates and maybe president, But what parties are going to be on the ballot in the year 2000? You could have something like 5 parties or 6 parties on the ballot if they can get above 5%. And to have Republicans and Democrats, in effect, freezing the Reform Party out of this debate, it seems to me a real conflict of interest. And quite frankly, you know, it's almost a monopoly and restraint of trade. If you had Ford and General Motors saying no one else could produce cars, you'd have a real problem.
Doesn't Pat make a pretty good point here?
Absolutely. It looks like a bunch of fixers sitting around deciding what to do, which is exactly what Ross Perot says about the system. It fulfills the fantasies out there about how Washington operates. Now, aesthetically speaking, it's so much better not to have Ross Perot in there. But it's not fair, and there should be one standard, which is if you get $30 million from the Election Commission, you should debate. Common sense tells people out there that if we're going to give him that much money, we should hear him debate. That's the standard.
I got to ask you, Bob, seriously. Margaret's point, I think, is persuasive. Just hear this through, Bob.
No,
This man who got more votes than anybody in the history of the country as a third-party candidate in 1992. He's on all 50 ballots. He changed American politics by putting the deficit on the national agenda. And here he is with $30 million, and people aren't even going to get to see what their money's going for.
He screwed up.
They've kept them out.
Created a lot of demagoguery on the budget deficit they're putting on the agenda. The Natural Life Party is on all 50 budgets too. But as a matter of fact, when you come to this little guy is getting what he deserves. This whole nomination process in the Reform Party was absolutely corrupt. He refused continually to debate Dick Lamb, and he did that. He's got 4% or 5% of the polls. He doesn't deserve to be in the debate.
This isn't personal peak, but we'll be right back. We have to go to a break right now.
Capital Gang is brought to you by GTE. It's amazing what we can do together. And by US Air, the airline committed to making your business travel easier by offering nearly 5,000 flights a day.
Some of your best ideas happen up here with us.
I need somebody help, not just anybody help. You know I need someone help.
Every day, millions of customers count on GTE people. GTE quality. GTE reliability. So if you think telecommunications have only complicated your life, there's one company you can count on for help.
Won't you please help me?
GTE.
Help me.
Amazing.
GE begged me not to exaggerate during this commercial. So I'm just going to say that switching from ordinary bulbs to GE halogen lighting will give you a whiter, crisper, brighter light. I'm not going to say it'll make your home look like new, or, you know, make Junior more presentable, or even make you look younger. Hey, all I'm saying is, you ought to try them. I'm not promising any miracles here, folks, but with the revolutionary GE halogen effect, you'll definitely see a difference.
You've thought about it. What would happen if you weren't here? Where would the money come from to take care of your family, their home, their education, their future? People with life insurance have the answer. Life insurance. It isn't for the people who die, it's for the people who live.
Welcome back. Focus on 96, the week's presidential campaign. It began with Bob Dole falling off the stage when an unsecured railing gave way.
I think I just earned my third Purple Heart going over the rail.
The Republican candidate this week emphasized crime and drugs.
Just do it. You've heard that slogan. That's good advice on the basketball court or the football field. When it comes to advice about drug use, the Dole administration will set a very different but simple standard. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
His own Surgeon General even considered legalizing drugs. And in front of our children on MTV, the president himself.
If you had it to do over again, would you inhale?
Sure, if I could. I tried before.
Bill Clinton. He just doesn't get it.
President Clinton pleased environmentalists. The president did receive the endorsement of the Federal Order of Fraternal Order of Police, a policemen's group that had previously endorsed Republican candidates for president, and we are right now in the middle of the show. And the president did designate 2 million acres out in Utah as a national monument, and CNN's latest tracking. Well, without that tracking poll, it showed a 20-point lead, if I'm not mistaken, ending last night for Bob Dole. Bob Novak, have we seen Bob Dole is down by 20 points to Bill Clinton? We've seen no movement in this race. Is this one more week with no real progress?
I'm afraid it is. And of course, it's bad luck. I mean, the Secret Service decided they didn't want to have the railing secured because some assassin might come over the railing. They decided that's just bad luck for him. But the idea is any week he's going to spend a whole week on this drug issue and the crime issue, which are not issues where he can show daylight with President Clinton. They think they can, but they can't. Any week that he doesn't talk about cutting taxes is a wasted week. I don't wonder that it just stays out there at between 15 and 20 percentage points. And of course, this guy is a tremendous candidate. President Clinton. He goes out, President Clinton, he goes out to Utah and he seizes the state because he only finished third in that state. And at the same time, in the dead of the night last night, he signs the bill blocking same-sex marriages, assuming his supporters in the gay movement won't do anything about it. They'll vote for him anyway.
Al Hunt, I mean, Bob Dole, anything he can do at this point?
Look, at this point, every week needs to be a good week. I think he's about 13 points behind, not 20, but when that's the case, every week needs to be a good week, and this one wasn't. It was largely beyond his control. In the first place, I agree with Bob Novak. Anybody could have slipped like that, and frankly, he showed a lot of moxie and courage getting up as quickly as he did.
Yep.
But so that was, I thought some of the news coverage of it was highly unfair. Secondly, on the crime issue, Mark, I mean, the Republicans blew it. Once they decided to become lackeys of the gun lobby, they have lost the crime issue. I'm sorry. That's, at least they don't have the edge they had before. And Bob, it really pains me to say this. On tax cuts, it's yesterday, Bob. Doesn't cut anymore.
I have to ask you, Pat Buchanan, I mean, looking right down the barrel, I mean, the difference people have, voters, see between Democrats and Republicans on the issues that Al's talking about, on drugs, crime. They just aren't there. Welfare.
Clinton's an outstanding campaigner. He has defensed the crime issue, which is a Republican issue, very well. He's defensed a number of issues. He sold Utah, which he wasn't going to get anyhow, for the environmentalists. What Dole's got to do is two things. First, you got to convince the nation to get rid of a president who's an incumbent. Secondly, you got to make the sale that you're the guy to do it. 1994, the American people voted to get rid of Bill Clinton. They got a new president, different Bill Clinton now, and he's up against a different Republican Party, so you got alternatives. Bob Dole's got a very tough sell. He's going to need some turnovers.
What about the turnovers? Do you see any coming, Margaret?
Some, but the Republicans, it still looks like they'll keep the House. But what Dole can't do is get at the character issue. He's been trying to do it through drugs, and it just simply doesn't work. Nobody thinks that kids getting stoned are Clinton's fault, except for the child who probably comes home and says, Clinton made me do it.
I'll tell you why they're doing that. They did a focus group, I understand, down in Florida where you had about 8 solid Clintonites and the rest were pro-Clinton. They hit them with all this negative stuff on Clinton and drugs, and all 25 of them, most of them were women, turned against Clinton. That's why they're hammering this issue. They think it's the one thing.
But it's not moving. It's not moving any place else because nobody thinks the president is really in control of drugs. People don't believe that. They've seen too much in their own families and all around them to think. And also, Clinton did not do what Dole says in the ad. He moved some of the drug money someplace else, but Dole himself voted against a drug czar.
That is a devastating little thing about him being so smarmy on MTV, saying I should have done it. He was trying to be smart, Alec, but it isn't going to make people not vote for him. That was four years ago. Yep. Now, I want to tell you this, that on the question of taxes, If it doesn't work, he's not going to be elected president. And there's people like you who want high rates of taxes, who want to redistribute the wealth of America, who say it isn't going to work, it isn't going to work. He hasn't said one word or two words about taxes all week. That's disastrous.
Yeah, I ask a question.
Because he can't explain it.
I've got to ask a question. The tax cut is not going. It is yesterday, Bob. I'm sorry. And the problem is that Bill Clinton, this administration, has refuted supply side. Quite frankly, he's refuted it by raising taxes on the richest 1.2% and having their income go up.
I'm so sick of that Marxist baloney.
Chico or Harpo? We just asked a simple question in a poll we did this week. What would be better, a $110 billion tax cut or a $550 billion tax cut? You would think most Americans say they don't. By about 3 to 2, they say a smaller tax cut. They've been brainwashed by the media, right?
If you want to strip the Democrats away, which he's got to do to win, you can strip them away on the fact that the median family income has gone down 5 or 6 years in this decade. You got a $200 billion trade deficit or merchandise trade deficit. This is the way to get them back in Michigan, Bob, and there any other way to do it.
Last word, Pat Buchanan. Next on Capitol Gang, Republican retreat on Capitol Hill.
Maybe you've heard the term partial birth abortion and all the controversy surrounding it. But do you know what this procedure really is? Do you know what it takes to abort a fetus the same age as these premature infants? Do you know why even many pro-choice supporters are against it? For the truth about this procedure, call this number for a free pamphlet. Life, what a beautiful choice.
Oh, we're going to the hooky-la, hooky, 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 hooky-la. Everybody.
Special financing now available.
Where the la-la with the cow.
When I was a kid, I had to take penicillin for 9 years. Probably it saved my life. I think that bacteria, having evolved over the last 4 billion years, they have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. There's a real need out there. There are people that are dying now. Literally, there's a 35% mortality rate that's been reported for some of these infections that, there's no drug left. I am a pharmaceutical company researcher. I'm involved in the oxazolidinone project. We're developing these compounds for treating gram-positive infections that are multi-drug resistant. My hopes really are that someday some kid will have the drugs that I've been working on for the last 8 years available to them to save their life.
Welcome back. The Republican-controlled 104th Congress moved toward final adjournment as top leaders yield to President Clinton's demands to spend $6.5 billion more for education and other social programs.
Obviously, they're having what I would call a political deathbed conversion on education.
Given the news media's bias and given Clinton's ability to claim things, we're simply not going to allow them to close the government and blame us for it. And so, yes, we're going to try to work out an appropriations bill in the next week.
Republicans also agreed to Democratic proposals requiring insurance to cover mental health and a guaranteed hospital stay for new mothers.
Congress did, as Hillary said, answer our call to tell the insurance companies that newborns and their mothers deserve at least 48 hours in the hospital. They can't be kicked out 8 hours after delivery anymore.
Margaret Carlson, have the revolutionary Republicans of 1994 turned into mushy, middle-of-the-road moderates on the eve of the 96 election?
The next thing is going to be 72 hours for us new mothers.
How about a whole week?
Yeah, hey, I'm for it. Yep. Yeah. The revolution is dead. Any doubt that the revolution is dead it should be gone. May it rest in peace. Dole is the only person who wants to continue. He wants to tap into this a great vote for gridlock, but nobody else does. The Congress sees that it's in their interest to cooperate with Clinton and get these bills passed, get the spending bill passed. They found out with the first government shutdown that people do not want their particular revolution. They may want a balanced budget, they may want spending cuts, they want tax cuts, but they don't want it Gingrich's way.
Bob Novak, I mean, seriously, I mean, we're talking about the Republican Party boasting of minimum wage pass, boasting of portability of health insurance. These were the revolutionaries. Got to have women in the hospital for 48 hours. You said that was sissified.
You know, I know when they put up the white flag, I surrender, dear. And because and the president, when he rubs it in, he says, you did as Hillary said. I mean, the idea of the federal government determining how many days the mothers are going to be in the hospital and the Republicans lying down. The Republicans are terrified because what they want to do is win. They want to get back in office. They're scared to death. They misplayed their hand. They've surrendered on all fronts. Much more important than any of this is they gave another $6.5 billion. You know what they call that? They call that the exit ticket from Washington. You spend $6.5 billion, you get out, and you get to go home and campaign.
Pat Buchanan, terrified, weak-kneed, surrendering. Are those the words you associate with the Republican majority in Capitol Hill?
Well, the Republicans did come in like lions, and they're going out like lambs.
Lambs?
And some of them don't want to be lamb chops, and that's the problem. But I'll tell you, here's what happened, though, seriously. That great battle where they put Medicare up there, a terrible mistake, and told the president, you know, cut Medicare or we'll shut down the government, was a blunder. Since then, they've been an army in retreat, you know, throwing away the canteens and the guns. They don't have a leadership.
Caporetto.
They need to put a defense line and stand together and fight. Instead, it's everyone for himself, everyone save himself. It's self-preservation over principle, and it's regrettable.
Al Hunt, I have to ask you. I heard Pat Buchanan once talk about a convention of political cross-dressers. Now we're seeing cross-dressing Republicans. They're sounding like left-wing liberals, simple pinkos.
I want to coin another phrase. I want to say amen to everything Mr. Novak and Mr. Buchanan have just said. You know, for months, some conservatives, not Mr. Novak, have claimed that we may lose this skirmish, but we won the war. The agenda is less government. It's cracked down on welfare. Clinton moving to the right. Well, the last few months have totally decimated that canard. Republicans, as you said, have capitulated on minimum wage. They've expanded the federal role in health care. They have added to domestic spending. They've thrown in the towel on entitlements. And, you know, Newt can cry baby all he wants, Mark, but the fact of the matter is the American people have said no to dismantling government and no to that revolution.
Newt did sound a little bit like a crybaby, blaming the press.
He was whining. He was whining. He ought to get off blaming the press.
Georgia whine. I never heard of Georgia's wine country.
There was one more thing that we haven't talked about. The Senate passed a bill extending the Brady bill to people who are guilty of domestic violence. Yes. You know, that may mean that somebody who spanks their kids, you know, Al may even spank his kids.
No, my kids spank me.
Oh, is that
the other way around?
But somebody who spanks their kids might not be able to buy a gun. And I understand the House leaders say, we are not going to be accused of being against domestic violence. We're going to go along with this.
Can I ask you a question, Bob? Did you ever spank your child?
Okay.
Did you, Bob?
I don't have to tell that person
I heard
kind of stuff.
there was a little bit of domestic tiff in the White House. Would that disqualify the first couple for a handgun there, Bob?
Last word, Pat Buchanan. Thanks for being with us, Pat. The gang will be back with the outrage of the week.
Up here, there are no ground rules. So go ahead. Think. Build. Create. Do something amazing. You're going places. And that's why we're here.
You've thought about it. What would happen if you weren't here? Where would the money come from to take care of your family, their home, their education, their future? People with life insurance have the answer. Life insurance. It isn't for the people who die, it's for the people who live.
Odoru kodomo, suteki na
When Tokyo Electric Power turned to GE for its advanced turbine technology, it gave Tokyo the largest, most efficient power plant of its kind in the world, which means more jobs for people back home and a better future for the people of Japan.
What did they know and when did they know it? They read it in National Journal, Government Executive, Congress Daily, or Hotline. Monthly, weekly, daily, the publications of National Journal, the inside source for Washington insiders.
Tonight on CNN's Inside Politics Weekend, the campaign advertising wars. Do candidates play dirty politics, or is it fair play? A look at the messages you're seeing in the media. Tonight, 7:30 Eastern on CNN.
Now for the outrage of the week. Flags have been flying at half-staff this week to honor a former vice president of the United States who dishonored that high office. Spiro Agnew pleaded no contest to tax evasion and resigned in disgrace after it was revealed that he had shaken down contractors and engineers, illegally accepting bags of cash when he was only a heartbeat away from the presidency. That's an outrage. Bob Novak.
The California Civil Rights Initiative, which would end government-sponsored racial preferences, will be debated this week at California State University Northridge. Speaking for the controversial ballot proposition will be David Duke. This notorious racist was invited by students who opposed the initiative and paid $4,000 out of student funds to identify the proposition with the extremist right. I call it the dirty trick of the year.
Margaret?
After years of cover-up, the Pentagon now admits that it trained torturers and murderers at an Army school in Fort Benning, Georgia. Graduates include monsters like Roberto d'Aubuisson, the leader of El Salvador's right-wing death squads, and of 19 Salvadoran soldiers linked to the 1989 murder of 6 Jesuit priests. Disclosure is not enough. To get this blood off its hands, the U.S. must name those responsible and banish these officials from the United States Army.
Al Hunt.
Mark, you were right about Agnew. Vote-hungry congressmen are desperately trying to pass a viciously ugly immigration bill that would toss little school kids out in the street, encourage INS Gestapo tactics by eliminating due process for many aliens, and keep families apart by only permitting upper-income immigrants to join parents or children in this country. This is a bill worthy of a major power, Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, not of a great and good country like America.
Can I say a word to Margaret?
I know d'Aubuisson is a friend of yours.
He was. He's dead now. You may not know.
He was good on the tax.
I will say this. You may not have realized it. You might not have even cared, Margaret, but we were in a great struggle, the Cold War, which we won. We had to use hard tactics. We had to have harsh people like Roberto d'Aubuisson, and I think the people who made these tough decisions should be honored, not banished.
I think they should be banished, and no one needs to kill Jesuit priests.
Bob, you want to go on record as endorsing the assassination?
There are some unfortunate victims in any war. War is an ugly thing, but
assassination isn't a victim.
Thank God that there were people in Latin America like d'Aubuisson who fought the communists.
I could not disagree with you more.
And priests.
I could not disagree with you more. Good night, Bob. This is Mark Shields saying good night for the Capitol Gang. Next on CNN, Inside Politics Weekend with Wolf Blitzer. What's up, Wolf?
Mark, coming up, the latest on the presidential debates and the campaign ad wars. We'll show you what's been hitting the airwaves in the presidential contest. Plus, Bill Schneider, our political roundup, and Mark Russell. All ahead next on Inside Politics Weekend.
Sunday, job security. For many Americans, a promise that no longer can be kept. Downsizing the dream. Sunday.